Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
What's up, champs? Welcome to another episode of the Short Shifts Fantasy Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Keeping Karlsson. I'm your host, Louis Ezekiel. Joining me tonight, my pal and yours, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, how are you doing on this fine Tuesday evening?
It is such a busy Tuesday evening. I feel like we're going to zoom through. We're actually going to have a short shift because we both know how many games are still alive right now, and we're going to want to go check out those scores. But also, now it's my turn to be freezing cold because the tundra has hit where I live now, and it's freezing. So I'm happy to be inside with you chatting tonight.
Yeah, I think even my people out in Vancouver and Seattle are crying about the weather a little bit. We've had 7 feet of snow this winter total, so I'm not super sympathetic. And I am excited about some of these late games, but I benched most of my boys who are in those late games. I have a real East Coast bias for my team. I have Nick Schmaltz and Alexander Carrier still going. And he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys still going. So yeah, I think it's just my choices when it comes to drafting. I think that East Coast bias is real.
I mean, I could see it. It's hard sometimes. You're like, oh, I just saw them play. They must be doing good. You fall into the trap.
Yeah, I think there's some internal bias that I need to assess. But hey, let's jump right into it because I don't know if you know, but we have about 6,000 injuries to discuss. You thought we wouldn't have anything to cover, given that there was just one game on Monday between us and the megashow. Well, the joke is on you because everyone and their mother got injured, and we have a lot to talk about there. So let's jump right into it. And I'm going to start with a team that, despite being far more successful, I think, than anyone planned on this season, is dealing with monster injuries. Kirill Marchenko, who's just been having a great season. Somebody, by the way, that I talked about right at the start of the season as having some real potential if he kind of took over that Johnny Gaudreau spot. But he got a broken jaw, and not from a hit, not from anything crazy taking place. He was sitting on the bench. He was supposed to be out of the play, safe from danger. Took a puck to the face and has a broken jaw, out 4 to 6 weeks. I am not a doctor, to be clear. But what I heard, from the chatter online was that basically, 4 to 6 weeks, but the type of repair they did, kind of inserting a plate and screws into the jaw rather than wiring the jaw shut. People said that indicates that it could be on the shorter side of that 4 to 6 weeks. So fingers crossed, anybody who has been, either enjoying Marchenko or, the lines has been able to carry along with him. Cole Sillinger takes over on line 1, power play 1. A little surprising maybe to see Kent Johnson not get that spot. But on the other hand, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We will talk about Kent Johnson a little later when we get to our hot and cold streaks after we cover all these injuries. He had another one here today. So yeah, don't mess with a good thing, I suppose. Also, in less serious but still probably concerning news, Zach Werenski was out day to day. Ivan Provorov took over power play 1. I really thought about picking up Provorov. I was had my mouse over him several times today. Ultimately, he did get scooped up by another manager, the manager who took Zub yesterday when I was thinking about him. So we're obviously sharing a brain space. Provorov was great. He had a goal and an assist. That's a guy I've liked a lot of the season as a floor defenseman, even without power play 1. Werenski could be back as soon as the next game. So, I don't know that you necessarily need to go and jump on Provorov. Probably the value that he was going to provide you mostly got expended here on Tuesday. But a nice run for him while Werenski is out. How about some returns? We got an ouchery here, so we'll try to sprinkle in some positive news where we can. Take us over to Utah, because we got a guy coming back. I know they talked about him a little bit on the Mega Show, so we don't have to be super long on this section.
Yeah, we've got some good news coming out of Utah. We've got Dylan Guenther returning. He missed 12 games. He's been out since January 8th. So that's exciting for the Utah Hockey Club, who could definitely use this boost. He had 34 points in 40 games this season so far. So it's exciting to have him return because just a fun fact for everybody out there, but Utah has scored 2 goals or fewer in their last 5 straight games. So they could really use this boost of offense. So hopefully that is what the return of Dylan Guenther does for them. Josh Doan has been on Power Play 1. I know you guys have heard us talk about him for the last little bit. We've been excited about these Utah lines getting the shakeup, but it does look like Guenther is getting his spot back, so he'll take that hot seat on the Power Play with Schmaltz, Hayton Keller, and Sergachev.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely be nice for Utah to get Guenther back. Logan Cooley remains out. That I think is, a little more of a straw that stirs the drink offensively. Obviously, he'd been clicking so nice on that top line. But for the meantime, we will continue to see Alex Kerfoot take that spot. So maybe a little more limited value to Kerfoot. But again, like they said on the Mega Show, that's not someone I would be particularly interested in. Another quick one here. Mitch Marner has missed his first game of the season. He is supposedly day-to-day and was a game-time decision. So you got to imagine he was reasonably close to playing and should be doing okay. They said that his participation in the Four Nations is not at risk. So doesn't sound like it's anything too serious. Here's one. I hate to toss you one here that I know is a little painful for you to talk about, but I know you'll power through it as a true professional. But we did see that hit to the head on Sunday, and it is having repercussions across these leagues. Tell us about Buffalo, please.
Yeah, this one is a sad one for me. I rostered Tage Thompson in 2 leagues. I was a huge believer. I still am. He's been great for me. Don't get me wrong, but he is out with that head injury. And I know that everybody has heard us say it before, but head injuries, they could be quick return or they could be long-term return. It's so hard to say. Buffalo only has one more game before the Four Nations break. That game's Saturday. So this is definitely probably a stash and make a plan. I don't know if they'll play him Saturday or if they'll say take that extra time just to be sure. Tough call. In the meantime, we've got JJ Peterka and Yuri Kulik skating with Isaac Rosen, which I found was an interesting little fun tidbit. And as of the end of the second period tonight, I know it's been longer since then, but he had 1 shot on goal. So I wouldn't be rushing out, especially with just one more game left this week. But it is exciting to see who ends up skating with Peterka and Kulik in the meantime.
Yeah, a couple of those teams only playing on busy Tuesday and Saturday this week. It's not been a very nice time, for your Buffalo players or for your Detroit Red Wings, for instance. But yeah, we saw Zucker, Cousins, and Tuck kind of forming the first line. I think even though they were listed lower, that Peterka, Kulik, Rosen line is probably your second line. Benson, McLeod, Quinn on the third. And yeah, so obviously really important to get Tage back. If I were the training staff, though, I don't see any reason why I would play him on Saturday. Sorry. And, I could certainly benefit from it too. But I think that's probably, this is a case of discretion being the better part of valor. Another big injury, Matthew Barzal is out indefinitely, potentially for the fantasy season. We had some worrying quotes from Patrick Waugh, who suggested, that Barzal may be done for the regular season this year, and that would certainly have him be out for the fantasy season naturally. In his absence, I know they talked about this a bit yesterday. It was Lee, Horvat, and Duclair up on the top line. Simplecause, Nelson, Palmieri, and Cizikas, Peugeot, and Holmstrom. I know they spent a good deal of time talking about Holmstrom. The power play units also D'Angelo, Horvat, Holmstrom, Duclair, and Lee, so no big surprise there. Horvat did put up a goal, so we haven't, lost all of our scoring off of that top line. But yeah, that's going to be a blow. I did see someone in my Allied chat, which is always good to bring this up. Every comic book could be somebody's first. We have Allied chat in the Discord where you're speaking with other managers, all in different leagues, who picked in the same slot as you, so you're never worried about revealing your plans to your league mates. He sent out a Barzal and Hischier trade for Boldy. which I thought was an interesting move. I think it's, he's sending it to someone who is in, a good position where they're not worried about, not worried about making the playoffs. Boldy obviously has that great playoff schedule. He's now kind of the guy in Minnesota while Kaprizov is out. Barzal and Hischier obviously are, that's a lot of value. I think either one of them probably is taken before Boldy, but because they're both injured and because there are some question marks about them, I thought it was an interesting deal. Hischier more likely to come back, but the risk is there that neither of them could back, but the benefit of getting them both back is pretty sweet for Boldy. So I thought that was kind of a clever way to make that move. All right, continuing with injuries, we still got to do some more. We got a familiar name here. People know what to do in this circumstance. Take us over to Ottawa, please, Elizabeth.
Yes. Going into Ottawa, we know Josh Norris. He's a bit of a Band-Aid sometimes. And right now he is supposedly having out with the upper body, potentially mid-body injury. I know that we were talking earlier this evening before Lewis goes to volleyball. Guys, he works out. And he suggested that we'd be looking at Pinto, but then Pinto actually left today's game during the first period. So this could be a huge hit for Ottawa if he doesn't return. I think it's going to be interesting. Cole Reinhardt got the call up. Again, he's probably not going to be the guy we're looking at. I like Ridley Gregg. He's from Alberta, so I might be biased there, but he's had 17 points in his 50 games played so far. He has an impressive 32 minutes of penalties if you're in a bangers league, so just something interesting. He's had points in his last 3. He's already had an assist tonight. And again, that was at least half an hour ago. So I do find him a little bit interesting if we do see both Norris and Pinto go out. But if they both go out, it could be a rough go for Ottawa. So with caution, go forward.
Yeah, so Norris for sure is going to be out instead a few weeks with that injury. Pinto obviously is more recent, so we'll update as we find out more. But yeah, not a great situation. We talked about one defenseman who went day-to-day and missed a game today who has contributed to a ton of his team's recent scoring. And I believe Zach Werenski has 33% participation on Columbus Blue Jackets goals this season. There is only one defenseman in the league who has participated in a higher percentage of his team's goals, and I'm sure you are not surprised to find out that is Quinn Hughes. 40% of Vancouver goals this season. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but approximately 108% of all Vancouver goals over the last 2 weeks have had Hughes involved. Coach said he wanted to play. So, I think that this is, another situation where it's being cautious with a really, really important player that you absolutely cannot afford to lose. In his absence, we saw Hronik take the power play 1 spot with Besser, Pettersson. That would be the center, Pettersson, not either of the defensemen Petterssons, Garland and DeBrusk. We're going to have to be very careful about how we discuss our various Elias's Pettersson moving forward. But we do hold out hope, I think, for that triple Pettersson goal. I think that would be very exciting. That second power play, not looking great. Myers, Hedel, Suter, Sherwood, and Dakota Joshua. I would love to see Hedel now in Vancouver post-trade. Maybe push his way into that top power play. Maybe he supplants Garland for a bit. Maybe he supplants DeBrusk. I think that would be really nice, but I'm not holding my breath on it. We got to wait until things kind of calm down a little bit. We stop having players leave with injury. And, obviously we've had the trade. So when the dust settles, I'd love to see Hedel get a shot on that top power play. Couple more notes from Tampa Bay. I'll toss it to you first because this was one that happened mid-volleyball game as well, because if we didn't have enough injuries already, we were adding them quite frequently throughout the course of the night.
Yeah, like you said, we don't have a lot of information on this one. This is live from tonight. We're breaking news. Just kidding. It did happen a little bit earlier. It happened in the first period of that game. Ridley Gregg seemed to be the cause. He seemed to have hit Nick Paul, who ended up leaving the game. He logged only a minute and 17 of ice time before having to leave. So it was a very early hit in the game, and it looks like Nick Paul will be out for at least the rest of the evening. So that's a bit of a turn for people who might have put him in their lineup and then had him go out so quickly.
Yeah, you hate to see the depth take a hit like that. They did manage to pull through with mostly their top six doing the heavy lifting for a victory against Ottawa. Speaking of kind of those main role players, we did see kind of a return to the usual form as Darren Radish took power play 2. And Hedman was back on the first power play, back to sort of what we assumed would happen sooner or later. I would definitely have an eye on Radish as a potential snoozer. I might be looking for some other options out there that might be a bit more appealing. Even in the short term, a guy like a Provorov, Travis Sanheim had an assist today. So if he was dropped, I know that he was, in quite a cold stretch for a while. So, we've got certainly, if he's still being useful for you, but that second power play is not the top power play in Tampa. So if you're hanging on to Darren Radish, I would have a timer on that situation because I think ultimately sooner rather than later, that's going to be a guy that you can afford to let go. Whew. And we interjected in there with a couple, line change type stuff, and we had one ouchery in there, but a lot of depressing news, but maybe some good opportunities for some folks who might move up into a better position. But some of these guys we're talking about really are those offensive linchpins, especially those big defensemen we talked about. So unfortunately, I think a lot of these are just kind of bad for the team overall. But like we said, there may be some opportunities in there too. We are going to head into a quick break, and on the other side, we will chat about some hot streaks for you before we take off. You're listening to Short Shifts.
This ain't the little itty bitty teeny tiny bowl. This is Super Bowl LIX 59, baby. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the Super Bowl 59. Scoring touchdowns is key to hoisting the Vince Lombardi trophy, and you have a shot to score big by betting on them at DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice.
Welcome back to Short Shifts. Kind of a top-heavy show here, but we definitely wanted to bring up a couple people who are on nice runs. They might be available in some of your leagues. I don't know about the second guy we're going to discuss, but we'll see. And then we've got a little strategy for our long upcoming match here as well. But let's start with Kent Johnson, good Michigan boy, unlike bad Michigan boy Josh Norris with his injuries all the time. So Kent Johnson, like we mentioned, still playing line 2. But again, why fix something that is not broken? They are obviously having a ton of success on that line, so don't mess it up. I think that's why they moved Sillinger up. Johnson is on quite the streak here. In his last 10 games, Kent Johnson has only gone pointless once. He has 2 multi-point games in there with a goal and assist in each of those. So he has been on quite a roll, even more so than his fellow Michigan guy, Adam Fantilli. So if you let Johnson go, he's only 22% rostered on Yahoo, still on that first power play. This is a guy that I would jump on. He is seeing a ton of success. He's pretty widely available. Obviously, the schedule this week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday is not great, but they come out of the break against Chicago. That's always a good way to get your offense rolling. I think there is, almost no threat to his playing time. He could even move up to that top line if they decide to put a little more offensive firepower up there with Marchenko out with injury. And he is triple eligible on Yahoo. So that just adds even a little bit more for him there. Definitely be looking at Kent Johnson, low roster guy, but definitely worth a look. I do worry a bit about the break, taking a little bit out of his streak. It can be hard to maintain that kind of, fire with a break in between, but he's certainly being put in a position to succeed, and he seems to be having a lot of fun there. Had just an absolute beautiful spinorama backhand for his goal here on Tuesday. Really cool stuff.
Yeah, Johnson's looking great. I'm surprised at how low his rostering is as well. So definitely somebody that I think people should be keeping a better eye on, taking a look at. He does still have 2 games left this week. Unfortunately, they are both busy days, so always we say check your lineup before you add somebody. This is definitely one of those weeks where that should be the rule. Always do it though, you guys. It's the best way to make sure you can fit them in, but he does still have 2 games left if you're interested.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I mean, this guy who's on such a hot streak, like, you may have someone on your roster that he should be starting instead of. Just saying.
Absolutely. And now I'm going to take us to another hot streak, taking us over to Jake Sanderson, who has had goals in his last 3 games. He's actually had 34 points in 52 games this year already. Last year, he had 38 points in 79 games. So this is looking to be a pretty good year for Jake Sanderson. I was actually pretty surprised by this. I had noticed he was on this little bit of a streak here, but I was surprised by his overall numbers and how they are trending up this year compared to his previous years. So maybe somebody to be keeping a better eye on for me. He is 89% rostered in Yahoo, so I think I am probably one of the very few people snoozing on him. But be interested, take a look, see if he's taken in your league. Again, this is another guy on a hot streak with only 2 games left this week. And of course, they are on the busy days because this week is not schedule friendly. So again, my advice, as usual, check before you add, please.
Yeah, I wanted to get him in here because he has been having a really nice season, and it's a name that we haven't brought up a lot. We talked about him a lot last year because we kept seeing Thomas Chabot in and out of the lineup, and we wanted to kind of see what Sanderson has. And even with Chabot playing, quite a bit more this season, I think, than last season. I don't have the numbers directly in front of me, but yeah, it's been nice to see him really find some success. I believe Erik Karlsson scored goals in 3 straight games a number of times, maybe 5 times for Ottawa was what I saw on a tweet. And yeah, now Jake Sanderson has his own up there, and there were a couple other guys who had done it once or twice. But anytime you are, getting mentioned in the same sentence as Ottawa era Erik Karlsson, you're probably doing something right. So great for Jake Sanderson. Good on the managers who grabbed him. He has been playing very nicely for them. The last thing, just wanted to kind of chat briefly about this since, this may be the last time that we get to talk to listeners for a little while. But we do have this really long week 19 coming up that includes the couple weeks of break. So week 19, at least on Yahoo, and again, obviously things can be different depending on what platform you're using, or I know if it's Fantrax, you can ask them to kind of set it up the way that you want. But we've got this 3-week week coming up. On Yahoo, you're only going to have those same 4 moves for that whole week 19. So what do you like to do strategy-wise when there's a break? Obviously, when we have the All-Star break, we're kind of used to sort of using that as some time. For the players themselves, it's a nice chance to recover. Obviously, given the tenor of our episode, lots of guys can really benefit from this break coming up to try and get healthy on the other side. But what are some things you like to do when you have a long week like this and, some opportunity to make some changes potentially?
Yeah, the first thing I would suggest, and we were talking about this earlier, is take the ads that you have this week and make sure you're maximizing them at the end of the week if you haven't already used them and you have the ability to do so. The other thing I am a big proponent of is if somebody is in your IR and they get well in the middle of that week magically, sometimes Yahoo will get the updates because the teams are releasing updates. Don't remove them until it's closer to game time so you don't have to worry about dropping someone. You just never know how people could come back from the break. They might have been struggling with something before the break. We might get a notice after. Just be a little bit leery about making those kind of big shifts in your roster when you only have the 4 ads and there is that big gap of time off.
Yeah, it's a really good point. You never know who might come back and feel a little under the weather, and suddenly you've dropped a player who had some value to you when you could have stashed someone. I think that's a really good point. As someone who frequently this season, and part of that is my horrible injury luck, but has frequently been using those moves pretty aggressively, and this is a mantra I will be reminding myself as well. I really want to be judicious with those moves. I think that, if there is someone who is out there and available, this week with teams like, the Jets and the Red Wings and Buffalo with some kind of unappealing schedules, I have seen some players hit the waiver wire that I'm quite interested in. Cole Perfetti was one that hit the waiver wire in my league, Capo Caco as well. So just some players that I've had some interest in and have had on watch lists at various times. Are out there and available. Like you said, maybe that means, I'm waiting until, we'll see how things are on Saturday. And if it's not going so well, maybe I'll make one of those moves there for one of my bench players. But you're absolutely right. Like, look ahead to what your team schedule is going to look like starting in late February when we finally come back, and see who's going to fit into the roster there. Like, do some good planning ahead. And if you can use those moves on Saturday and Sunday, as opposed to waiting until Monday when the moves reset, you're going to be able to outmaneuver some of your competition. And I think that is more important on a week where you're going to have a ton of downtime, where people are going to be really, pouring over those free agency lists as they are jonesing for a little bit of that fantasy hockey gambler's rush. You also mentioned a good time to maybe make some trades coming up on trade deadline in a lot of leagues.
Yeah, I mean, most leagues, I'm going to use that generally, are suggested that their trade deadline come up in February. I know ours is for the Cupful. I know my 2 other leagues are also coming up, and it is a great time to start making those trades. With people not playing, people having the week off, you can kind of take advantage of people looking for that hockey fix, right? Like in between those 4 Nation games, in between any PWHL type games that people might be watching, you can kind of fit in a couple little, hey, I need a defenseman, or hey, I'm looking at this guy on your roster, and see what you can do. I would especially recommend this for some of the people who might be in keeper leagues, because that trade deadline sneaks up on you fast, and you want to kind of have time to negotiate, in my opinion, to make sure you're both getting a fair-ish deal. Someone's got to win, someone's got to lose a little bit, but try to make those deals as best as possible in your favor.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. It's also a good time to sort of think about like where you are in the standings. Thanks in part to the injury bug here, I know that my chances of actually making the playoffs are slim to none, and a bunch of offers started coming in for Kirill Kaprizov. And, on the one hand, yes, adding him might mean that trading him away might mean I have better opportunities in the weeks leading up to those playoffs. But, thinking realistically, knowing that the person who is in 6th place would have to lose all 3 of their matches and I would have to win all 3 of mine and win the tiebreaker, it just seems pretty unlikely. So even though some of them were quite appealing, I got an offer of a very healthy and highly successful Matthew Tkachuk for my Kaprizov. But I also know Florida has a really bad fantasy hockey playoff schedule, as I imagine my opponent also knew, and that the Minnesota Wild have one of the best playoff schedules. So I looked at that and I said, listen, if I'm going to stay in my tier, I need to have an outstanding performance in the consolation playoffs. Can't afford, even for a great deal like this that would give me someone really effective in the next couple weeks. It just made more sense for me to decline that one and hang on for, making a move later. But if you are someone who is really secure in your position and you're going to make the playoffs, send out that offer. Grab Kaprizov so that you can have him for your playoffs. Maybe don't risk putting your bye week in jeopardy, but that could be a really effective move for you. Well, all right, folks. Thank you so much. It will be a little bit before we see you again. We'll make sure we let you know if we're going to be doing anything over the break. We've got a few ideas bouncing around, so we'll see if any of them come to fruition. But thank you, everybody who was watching the show live. We got more people in there even than usual, so that's really great to see. Elizabeth, thank you, of course, for joining me. Always super fun. And so if you enjoyed the show, please consider joining the Keeping Karlsson Patreon group. You can find it at keepingkarlsson.com/patron. Super supporters receive ad-free episodes. You can interact with Brian, Elon, the Short Shifts crew, and hundreds of the other talented fantasy managers on our very active Discord server. Check out GameDayTweets.com. Elon and Shams just added the ability to search by position so that when you are trying to determine which of the various Eliases Pettersson you are looking up, you'll be able to differentiate between them. No help, I'm sorry, for those folks trying to determine which Matt Murray they're looking up, but we're making progress all the time. Please visit that site and the other great sites we use to research our episodes at Yahoo, Frozen Tools, and Natural Stat Trick. Our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach, and until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.